poetry, radio, verse. It's all about the D. Desire, discipline, dedication. I know what you were thinking, savages, but that ain't it. Let's go. Our 4-part National Poetry Month Favorite Poems series.
There's really no one-size-fits-all when it comes to any form of art.
One of my loves in poetry is when poets get playful.
10 people can listen to a piece and they can get something totally different. Welcome, welcome, and welcome. I am James Hamilton, and this is Versed, your home for poetry on the radio. As always, we are coming to you from the hub of Midwest Poetry, the WBOM full-service radio studios located inside the basement of the Mendelssohn Center for the Performing Arts in Rockford, Illinois. Today, we are picking up with the final part, part 4 of our 4-part National Poetry Month Favorite Poems series. So next one is one of yours, Paul. If I were a poem, I inspiration.
If I were a poem, you would have to understand heartbeats and the hiccups in my brain activity in order to hear and feel me. Because if I were a poem, I would be that of an advocate of epilepsy if I were a poem. And you wanted to hear me, you would have to observe and listen through the activity of wires and electrodes and understand how to work the machines that study the slides of organisms that come from me. If I were a poem, you would have to have the capability to read the invisible ink and the scriptures that I wrote upon my soul and have the ability to see the stains upon my soul, the breakage upon my heart, the scabbing from the cutting of my body. If I were a poem, you would have to play like Heinz and catch up. Because it's been 13 years of living these poems before I ever put a poem to paper. Because if I were a poem, I would want to be heard. Because if I were a poem, I'd be that of inspiration, motivation, determination. If I were a poem, I'd prefer to be around other poems like me, though. Not like me, because there'd only be one like me, though. At the same time, I wouldn't be able to associate with every poem around me. I just know that some of them would disappoint me. So if I were a poem, I would have to step up and step over some of these poems. Because if I were a poem, I'll stand tall. I'll stand with my fist in the air if I were a poem. I would chant white, brown, black, unite. White, brown, black, unite. If I were a poem, I would question the norm of society, and I'd question authority. If I were a poem, I'd give you food for thought amongst society, because I'd be pinching my pennies, because Quest would be helping me. My dollars would be spent amongst private chefs, restaurants, and vendors from the blocks that'd be surrounding me. If I were a poem, my thoughts would have to escape immediately and be written upon any surface that was available to me. Not just notebooks, though that of cardboard during night shifts of palletizing at the end of an assembly line, or an envelope because it was closer to me. If I were a poem and you heard me, you would be that much closer to me. If I were a poem, I'd be that of my own sanity. If I were a poem, I'd be resurrected and reborn just to be a messenger to you. If I were a poem, I'd be a person of extraordinary talent. I'd be a wordsmith that speaks through verses and flows. I'd be a voice behind the pen. I'd be worthy of unmuted mic and ink if I were a poem. My poetry would speak in wows. You would be wowed if I were a poem. Everything I would do would be for the culture if I were a poem. My roots would be strong as grassroots and trees. My open mic status would shake the leaves. Though if I were a poem, I would never leave. Though my words would bless the air where it's fair like leaves blowing around in the wind. Do you hear that? Do you hear the rustle? Do you hear the hustle? 'Cause if I were a poem, you would definitely hear me, even feel me. And you might even start to understand me if I were a poem.
I've heard I refer to himself this way, his style this way, when he has read this poem as angry white man poetry. That's what he.
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong, and I know when he was here in the studio and he recorded this piece, he had a cold, so maybe he didn't hit it as hard as he had. But the thing about this piece that's cool is I've heard him do it fast. I've heard him do it slow. I've heard him do it timid. I've heard him do it restrained because of a cold, and I have heard him go full-on angry white man on this poem a couple of different times, which I think it makes it a strong poem.
Right.
Why did you put it on your list, Paul?
First of all, I love how you say this may not be his strongest performance, but boy, it's still a dramatic, emotional delivery. It's a poem where the words do that work, but then when he performs it, it's very emotional and very dramatic, and I love that.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. It's not that it wasn't his strongest performance. What I'm saying there is it's a testament to the work that this poem can be performed. So take what I do. You hear me do a piece, I do it the same way pretty much. I approach it like a songwriter, and the product that I put out, I want to sound consistent. Obbs, same way. We just talked about Obbs. You hear him do a piece, he does it the same way almost every time. Pitch, all of that. I has done this piece 5 or 6 different ways.
Wow.
Same words, different tone every time. When he was on the show, he subdued his performance from his self-proclaimed angry white man down a little bit because of breath control, because he was sick. So the words driving this piece forward, he shucks back and forth from positive stuff to, a lot of cultural references that unless you've been in a lot of places that he's been in, not everybody might get. He's a well-traveled poet. But the thing that I think gets me, we talk about his feeling in there are spots in this where it's almost a lamentation piece. You almost feel sorry for the poem when he says, if I were a poem, and it's almost a lamentation, like you feel sorry for the poem when he's writing it. He can convey that. Other places where it's like positive, where you feel elated for the poem, but there's places where you go, damn, I don't want to be that poem.
Right. Yeah, well, one of the places I love and I admire, he has a line, it's a chant almost.
Yep.
White, brown, black, unite.
Yep.
And that's a powerful line.
Yep.
And he personifies that to me.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, but that's very positive. You were talking about the negative, but there's some very positive, hope-filled
Not negative.
parts.
Lamentation, sad.
Oh, okay.
Sad. There's a line in there he talks about his epilepsy. That's
Right,
lamenting.
right.
He's lamenting the fact that forced him to make adjustments in his life at an early. That's a lament. It's not negative. It is a positive. It's a lamentation. But you find yourself feeling sorry for that because each one of these things in there he's referring to, he says, if I were a poem, So he's assuming the identity of the poem for what he's talking about. When he's lamenting, it's a sad poem.
Right.
I feel sorry for that poem. When it is a call to arms, white, brown, black, unite, that is a charge poem.
Right.
So each one of these descriptions that he gives in there is different. It's carried forward. He's talking about all of these different poems.
And he's got a very distinctive voice and word choice in those ways, but also voice.
And the
literally.
emotion comes out. I mean, I've heard his voice crack performing this where he didn't try to make it crack. He just was that in it when he did it.
Wow. So we just did a poem by Mr. Oz, by Audrey Barnes, where you called it his most authentic poem.
Yeah.
And it's sounding like we're describing If I Were a Poem that way about Inspiration.
He's got another piece that he calls his signature piece, and I would say that's probably his most authentic from a written standpoint.
Right.
This one, from a performance standpoint, it probably is this one.
Okay.
And it's only because it shows the versatility. Like I said, he can perform this any number of ways depending on the crowd, how he feels. You know, if he's down, those lamentation parts of the poem are going to hit harder. And if he's the elated eye inspiration, the happy parts and the cultural reference parts are going to come through. And if he's fired up about something, then the call to arms stuff is going to have that much more behind it. And you can feel that in his performance when he does this. So many different ways, and it's so indicative of how he feels that day. The love portions of it. I've seen him where he's had good love days, and I've seen him work through a divorce where those lines became sad and lamenting. So I would agree, from a performance standpoint, it may be a signature piece for him. Rachel, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I guess like when I heard it, it made me think about how with a lot of people, it's like if I could only just kind of take myself and just write it out on paper so that people could understand me kind of thing.
Right.
Where, you know, when you're just kind of interacting with people, it's hard to really understand each other sometimes. So it's just kind of a vibe of like, you know, I wish I could just get people to understand me, to understand other people. So I just kind of started thinking about like human connection with it.
Yeah, definitely. So it's almost like a list poem in a way where he says, I've been writing these poems, and then he calls out, you know, food for thought. He calls out wild poetry. He calls out, there's so many in there. I'm not going to do it justice to name them all, but there's a lot. And I've been in a lot of the same spaces as he has, so I know the ones he's talking about. It's a pretty comprehensive call out to a lot of things, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he is a leader in the poetry community in Wisconsin. And
yeah,
so
regionally,
that's
arguably,
appropriate for him to do.
Yeah, for sure. All right, moving on. We're going to go back to Aubrey Barnes. This is one of yours, Paul. This is Rap Ain't Raise You.
This goes to the woman in Des Moines, Iowa, who interrupted my set just to tell me that she don't fuck with hip-hop. Ma'am, don't act like rap ain't raised you. Like you wasn't influenced by these streets. Up at 6 a.m, remotely controlled by hard hip-hop beats which your parents deemed degenerate. Rehearsed rhymes riddled with rhetoric that make Reagan roll round casket. Boys in the hood made boys who were good trade in suspenders for street fashion. I'm talking FUBU, forces, face flags, and fitted caps, dress part and practice with pen and pad, perfecting poetry through spitting raps. Real talk, James. We learned more from lunchtime table ciphers than we did from fifth period English, and consider Nas more distinguished than poets whose prose put us to sleep. Yeah, I mean, Shakespeare was sharp, but Scarface, he pierced deep. Don't act like rap ain't raised you. Like you wasn't talked into sipping gin and juice cause Snoop Dogg made it sound smooth. The homie Dre's chronic stayed cotton head, anchoring down eyes induced by highs. Music drugged and tugged you out of sneakers into shoes of hustlers you never met. Tongue speaking a foreign language, saying slang you never said. Walking with a swagger seen as silly to people not privy to Tupac and Biggie. Residents who never left rural regions where they consider rap noise that was written by demons, but your ears heard nothing but echoes of angels. Beings whose lungs sung the holiest of hymns from Thug's Mansion. Black bodies whose souls and spirits poured out so much passion. Don't act like rap ain't raised you. Like you was never tempted to chant. In the words of NWA, fuck the police. Though the town sheriff left rot on your street. Same one that drove you back home last week after catching you throwing tags on City Hall. There were two of y'all, but you wanted to take the fall for Jaren, cause you're conscious of curse he's bearing, knowing black boys get bruised and beat by boys in blue, and all your homies held darker hues. Went to different schools, abide by different rules. Hip-hop gave you lens, though you had different views. As your broke down Buick blared narratives of NWA, prolific poets plagued by crack epidemic, ghetto griots took pain and penned poetry on pad, laid down lines written and raised on wax, telling of tension between cops and blacks. Lifting America's flag from over our faults, making sense of earthquakes that left homes broken, tremors that skeptics still scrutinize cause their solid foundations never felt flimsy, but those who sat with vibrations from verses understood a world they weren't birthed in. A world where hearing gunshots ringing while walking home ain't bring no alarm. A world where single parents would break down, cook crack when put under pressure, about a few blocks down from the units so kids wouldn't copy what mom or dad did to keep roof up. You may have grown out of touch with tales. You may even shake your head every time you hear NWA, 21 Savage, hell. You may even get on your feelings when you hear Kendrick Lamar on the Super Bowl stadium, but ma'am, don't you ever act like rap ain't raise you.
So why did you pick this one?
This, to me, is the quintessential Aubrey Barnes. And I love the message. I mean, for me, I had a comeuppance moment in college when I was talking about rap and hip hop as black music. And a friend of mine turned to me and said, have you looked at the demographics of who's making that music popular?
Right. The listener. The
listener,
the consumer,
is overwhelmingly white. The purchaser of the record back in the days, the album, those demographics overwhelmingly white. That title right there captures that dynamic to me, that comeuppance for me. This is right there. This hits home.
Rachel?
Okay, well, first I'm going to start off that I love the fact that he kind of starts off with kind of a roast where he's like, this is dedicated to that lady who
in Des Moines.
Yeah, in Des Moines. Who said that, she didn't like rap, or, so I just really admire that level of petty, and I applaud him for that.
Yeah.
So, okay, but anyway, I really do love this piece because one of my pet peeves is how a lot of white people, especially white music artists, they'll come in and they'll use hip hop culture, the appearance, the music, work with different rap artists. And then all of a sudden they're like, rap is just so shallow. It's all about money. It's all, and violence, so I'm just gonna, go and, oh, wait, which celebrity am I talking about? That's the fun part. We don't know because there's so many. Right. Anyway, but then it's like, okay, if you did like any research, just 5 minutes on Google, just type political rap music. There's so much out there. I mean, you got Public Enemy, you got like Jurassic 5 was another one.
NWA.
NWA.
We go down. Yeah, we go down the list.
Tupac had some. Wu-Tang had some.
Kendrick. Now.
Kendrick Lamar. Yeah, there you go. Like there's one that's like right here now. And it's like if you do any little bit of research, you would know that this is a very deep genre. And even in the past like couple of years, I really was trying to look for politically charged music. And honestly, the most politically charged music I found is in rap.
Yeah.
And it's just, how are you going to come into someone else's culture and then just use it and then kind of just, oh yeah, never mind,
I agree. And so the notes that I put down here, so the thing that attracts me about this poem, I think this is a love letter to the music that he loves, first and foremost. I love the 2 bouts of alliteration that he does in there with the P sound is great. And this is what I was talking about when we were talking about one of his pieces earlier. This is a structured piece. The 2 stanzas with the lines of alliteration fall in the same place in the verse, in the piece. You said it's a quintessential Aubrey Barnes piece. It is, because this is thought out down to the letter again. It is written to feel like a recollection or a stream of consciousness piece. They start out, this goes out to the lady, the roast in the beginning. And it's like, he's going to tell you a story. The coin is in this hand. I'm going to tell you a story. Meanwhile, he is giving you this beautifully written, structured piece, and the coin is actually down here. Oh. That is this piece. Is, all of the things we said about rap music? Yeah, but this is first and foremost, in my opinion, from the artist, this is a love letter to the groups. When I talk to Aubrey about parallels of hip-hop in what we do as spoken word artists, he mentions almost every artist he lists in this piece. This is a love letter from a rap fan to the artist that
Right.
create the music that he loves. I don't think, and I know, the coded language thing, I don't think this is a racial piece.
No,
I
no,
think
no, no.
this is a love letter to the music he loves, and that is, it doesn't matter who you are listening to it. It really doesn't. And that is one of the beautiful things about what he does. He's doing it from the standpoint, the vantage of a black male, because that's who he is.
Right.
He's authentic to himself. But he's saying, this is the music I love, and don't act like it wasn't there when you were coming up.
Right. So I'm going to disagree with you about whether it's a racial piece. Because to me, I mean, you say lady from Des Moines, we all know she was white. I mean, that's what it says to me, is because to me, Des Moines is, I mean, I went to school in Iowa. It's a very white place, Iowa is, but that is a coded racial call out. And I think he is saying to white people, don't tell me that blacks didn't influence you.
That's the great thing about art, is it's subjective. It
Right.
means something different to other people. I don't see it that way. I look at that lady as being, could have been anybody. Could have been a black lady that said, I don't like rap.
Okay.
Could
Fair enough.
have been.
Fair enough.
And that changes the connotation. But, I mean, after speaking to him and interviewing him and talking to him about this, I believe it's a love letter to the music he loves.
Yeah, I've never talked to him about this, and I see that too. I see the love letter to the hip hop artists is very much in there.
Isn't that what makes great art, is that 10 people can listen to a piece and they can get something totally different out of that piece than anybody else.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add to this one, Rachel?
Yeah, I guess I didn't really view it as a love letter until you said it, and now I do agree, but I still do think it's a racially. So I think we're all right. We're all winners, but it's
Thank you. We'll
Yeah.
just pat ourselves on the back here.
yeah, good for it. No, but it's one of those things where it's like you're holding on to your little guy and you're just like putting your hand out like, get back from my little guy. You know what I mean? Like, get back from this thing I love.
Well, that's the thing. Art is subjective. And the best art not only creates controversy, but it creates opinions, sometimes strong opinions in either direction. What does it mean to us? We internalize the art that we love. Do we like that piece? Yeah. Do we like it for different reasons? We do. And so does the breadth of other people out there. Will Aubrey ever actually come out and say why? If I was him, I wouldn't. I wouldn't say a goddamn word. I'd be like, you know what? Y'all figure it out. It means what it means to you. And that's why we do what we do and why we come up with these lists and put them together. All right, next one's one of mine, and it's actually one of mine. Mood Shine. Shined mood. And you send me messages in the night, prompting me to look them through. But all I got left to give is faded recollection. So here goes. I remember boo-boo slipping, sipping, shaking, not stirred, saccharine, foo-foo foam from stemmy, frosted glasses. Road trips, dope runs, Countess Villa attitude, drenched in sweet Luxardo altitude. Powder room highs, felony lines, braided twist accented on diamond studded wrist skin, objectification, toys from the attic playing on the fringe of night for days, smoked bougie hoo-hoos fucking with Mrs. Wrong, looking right past Mrs. Right the whole time. Whoever she was, I was too high to care. Situationship ingrained, normalized refrain, over-sexualized, another stained motel wash rag, shitty with biblical sin. Premarital by the hour, postmarital after a shower, breaking beds next to motel Bibles, fucking to the cadence and rhythm of Corinthians 7 verses 3 through 5, running kink until the cheap-ass flea market batteries ran dry. This is the bullshit I'm on while I drive home from living what I now call my normal life. Recollections, mood, shined, melodies, streamed beats tight down into the right, shifting gears north of 85. Clutched, brights on all the time, dimmer down, dimmer than dim, light low on the dash. Kilometer, millimeter, close to crash time. No shine time, shadow time. No divine intervention time. Light illumination, speed, radio blind, neon time. On reflection striped dark roads, mood shined to bury thoughts deeper in psychosis mind. Minute to hide the guilt hidden inside remnant razor cuts and needle tracks of the past. Scars, ratchet bitches, dirty blankets, sickly roses and Pyrex hoses, smoking petals of flowers, nitrous blue instead of red, screaming at the universe, why it ain't made me dead yet? Still, there are times I lay back in the driver's seat and miss you. Maybe I even miss the way we used to try and die. Different days, different times. 5 years gone by, and your messages still stop me on a dime. Times I wrote message after message to apologize, gaslighted high. If it was once, it was 1,000 times. Added words and erased or removed the blurbs and slurs. Pictures from the string, all the ring, a ding, a ding, a ding, a ding. Messages I never sent. Dried tears thinking about shitty Bob Evans potatoes with the steak and mushroom dinners that made you so happy. Back in the day in the home where we lived with the devil. He was there when I burned it all down. When I saw him in the flames, I could see he knew there needed to be no more he and she or you and me, because even though we joked, we really were trying to kick him out of hell. We were inevitable, unavoidable, and the devil without a job is not exactly employable, right? Work done in the end, all he needed to do was watch the burn. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, furniture and memories, vulcanized dirt and polyester wood, charred from rubbing on molten, steely, rusted bits of love's extremities. That fire, that devil, our devil, burned lies and truth. The smoke rose through the pines to the sky until the morning came through with an ember-colored sunrise. Black and gray soot smells of acetone, gas and turpentine, fire-stained brick, and of course, the two of us split. That devil's smile, mood shine that whole fucking night. So listen, thanks for the messages, but I'm doing fine. I put it on there for a reason, because it is one of my favorite pieces. It was on an album that I dropped last November. This has got something 25,000 plus streams or something like that.
Beautiful.
But it is probably the most deeply personal poem that I've written. It tells a story of an ex sending you a message at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then me going through the process of recollecting how that relationship went and how dangerous it would be to rekindle a relationship like that. And it's speaking to people out there. I listen to this as a reminder because I still get text messages at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I will play this piece, which I think is another thing that good poetry does for you, is you play a piece if you feel a certain kind of way, and it helps you do it. Rachel, what did you think?
Yeah.
It really just kind of made me think about how hard it is to kind of move on and live on from your past, and, you know, any kind of traumas that haunt you, and, you know, how just a little thing, well, I mean, that a text message isn't a little thing, but, you know, like anything can just kind of like trigger a flashback of that, and just like how it's a slippery slope into just falling into old ways. And no matter how much you heal, every once in a while it's going to sneak up somehow. And then it's just kind of a reminder that holding on to your past is going to just cause pain.
Mm-hmm. So. Paul?
You know, I was thinking about first, the rhyme in here is I thought it was subtle. It probably isn't. Rhyme, it's hard for rhyme to be subtle. But man, when you went divine, time, shined, you were bringing those I sounds. That was I'm not a lover of rhyme, but I loved that. And then the line that got to me was breaking beds next to motel Bibles. I mean, holy cow.
There's so much I could say, and I don't want to get into like an interview thing about the piece, but I will say this. The new book that I put out, we talked about 9 Roses earlier
Right.
in the special, putting a photograph in there. One of the most vivid memories I have of that relationship destroying is me at my house cleaning it out and burning in the pit all of the furniture and the boxes that we didn't open in 10 years and just the remnants of the relationship, and taking a picture of that fire while that shit was burning, and then looking at it 6 months later and actually seeing a devil figure in the flames.
I noted, I wrote devil here in my notes.
And so that picture is also in black. I have to go all the way through the process when I listen to it to get to that part about the fire. But seeing that devil in the flames while the stuff burned in the pit, to me, was symbolic of letting that evil go. That whole relationship was just not good. It took me to places I didn't want to go. I needed to get away from it, and I need to stay away from it, or he'll be back.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, you're sober now.
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah, that was
that
part
relationship
of it. Yeah.
was not a sober relationship.
Drug use was a big part of that relationship for a long time. So, yeah.
We didn't talk about him in the third person while we talked about this poem, Rachel.
Oh, look at that.
I feel like I've let us down.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I'm not going to hang on to it. It's just one of those things where it meant something to me. And what I wanted to get out of it from a favorite poem standpoint was, I think that is a way to talk about a favorite poem can be something that you go to for strength. It can be something you go to for entertainment, but I wanted this in here, and why I put it on my list. You know, ego, I think, I'm an artist and a performer. I got an ego. I get that. But in this case, I wanted it to be an example because this is the poem I go to when I need strength in that situation.
That is cool. No, my poem that I go to, and it's not mine, but it's Philip Larkin's This Be the Verse. They fuck you up, your mom and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They give you all the faults they had and add some extras just for you. Boom.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not bitter about my parents in any way, but that poem just hits, and also myself as a parent.
But when you hit the edge, that one brings you back.
Right, correct.
Yeah, that's
gives me perspective.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is a universal thing. This isn't just my mom, my dad. This isn't just me and my kids.
I think too often, and I'm not downgrading music, but there's, a lot of people will tell you, I have a song that I listen to, or, we had a song when I was in a relationship, and sometimes I'll listen to that. But for me, it's a poem. Do you have a poem like that, Rachel, that you go to for strength while we're in this?
Or a song?
Honestly, probably not, because like my brain like switches so much that it's like there's like a new song and new genre every single day. So I can't really go back to any one thing.
Knowing you a little bit, what about another cultural reference like Garfield or Hello Kitty? Because you're full of the cultural references.
I mean, I don't really look at pictures of Hello Kitty when, I'm like spiraling in depression, but I guess I could try it, Turn on like the Garfield cartoon I grew up on.
Right.
Yeah, I guess,
Right. I gotta watch SpongeBob when I'm down.
The other thing for me, because I'm a channel flipper as well, that's what makes this poem so, not only that I created it and then I listened to myself read it, but that I'm the same way. I'm a channel flipper. So the fact that I can go back to the same poem for the same strength is mind-boggling to me, because generally I don't have that. Like, there's nothing else that I would go to for my history with drugs. If I needed a song or a poem that would help me back from the edge, I don't have anything like that, because same way I flip channels. That's what makes it so stark to me, this piece, is that it does that for me. Because it really, it shouldn't, because my brain does not work that way.
Right. Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. And I just have to note, since I talked about Rachel and cultural references, James is wearing his favorite T-shirt today.
Really?
Yeah.
Girl.
Tank girl.
I didn't know you.
I'm a tank
knew
girl.
about
Yeah,
Tank Girl.
I don't collect much anymore because I live small on the road, but I do have a very small Tank Girl memorabilia collection that I thoroughly enjoy. Yeah.
Like the actual comics?
I don't have the kind.
Or the movie?
I have little collectible things. I have some figurines. I have some plaques. Shout out Dee Dee Love from Green Bay, who always keeps me in the best Tank Girl swag.
Nice.
This is one of yours, Paul. This is another one of the Lit Up crew. Brinley, her poem, Am I Selfish?
Am I selfish? Define selfish. Where do we draw the line? Does it all stem from some sort of vine? Does it flow through our veins and magically align? Is loving you more than myself such a crime? Or is it just selfish? Having food but unfed to see my spine, having a voice but staying mime, being a shadow but having the ability to shine. Is it in my bloodline? Or is it just selfish? My future split in two pieces like twine, a beautiful earth full of grime, having it all but still wanting more time. Is this all just for a rhyme, or is it just selfish? Being depressed and not fine, missing things over time. Saying no, please take the sign. Is this all part of something more divine? Is this all just in my mind, or am I just selfish?
Why did you pick this piece to be on your favorite poems list?
I just found it to be really artful. I love what Brinley does. And
Lil B.
is that her stage name?
That's what Lori was calling her.
Oh, that's great.
So while you're looking at your notes, I'll tell you, Lori sent me, I told you I work with her and, use her kind of as a coach. She sent me a picture that Brinley sent her 2 days ago. Brinley just got a new tattoo. You know what it is on her wrist?
Words matter.
It's a little bee.
Oh, no.
A little bumblebee
Beautiful,
tattoo.
beautiful.
Yeah.
No, and I found like her rhyme in this poem is fantastic. Shine, mine, time, and then I've got to figure it out. She uses vine. Here's the playfulness again, as a pun. It's a play on words when she uses it, and I love the playfulness. I love playfulness in poetry, even with serious subject matter. Is loving you more than myself selfish?
Yeah.
You can't just read that once.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
it's one of those. Yeah.
That takes some serious thought.
Yeah. Rachel, what did you think of this piece?
I just really loved it. Well, for one, all the Lit Up kids, their pieces were very mature for, all these high school age kids, So, I was going to say like, yeah, this was such a mature piece, but like, they all were. But anyway, for me, it was just really that kind of illusion that people have in their head that, when you're mentally ill and stuff, like there's so much that is considered selfish.
Right.
Whether it be self-care for yourself, that's, well, you're just being lazy or you're just being selfish, not thinking about other people. And, you don't want to reach out for help when you need it because you feel like it's going to look manipulative. And then you're like, well, maybe I am being manipulative because, they're out there eating dinner and I'm just going to call them up. Like, you know what I mean? So
Right.
I think that's just a very universal feeling that a lot of people go through.
Right.
Oh, nice insight.
But Brinley, I think, is, again, when we talk about people catching him at that formative state, I think Brinley is still growing. It has a ceiling that's coming. This poem in particular has
ceiling that's
still
out there, way out
we don't
there.
even know where.
Yeah.
Sky's the stratosphere.
Right.
Very traditional rhyme scheme.
Right.
Basic, traditional, the structure of the poem, basic, traditional. Line, line, rhyme, line, line, rhyme.
Right.
Same, the very traditional rhyme scheme, but yet a very maturely written poem.
Right.
Using a traditional rhyme scheme. Charles Mingus, the jazz bass player, said, making the complicated simple, that's art. And in this case here, it's sometimes taking the simple and making it complicated, backward. She does a very complex and mature thing with this poem using a very simple structure.
Right.
And that's saying something, I believe. And again, I can see Beach all over this piece. I mean, all over this piece. Yeah. And it makes me smile because I can now look at my pieces too and say, see Beach all over my pieces. So
So, yeah. And I would say, having spoken to Brinley outside of this show, that's a very mature young person.
Yeah.
Way beyond high school in terms of her level of maturity.
Shout out Lil B. All right. Going to move on to another Luke Welsh poem. This is one of yours, Rachel. Vestigial.
Vestigial. The wind spreads its wings horizon to horizon and glides over the cornfields, weaves through the trees in the park and through the cemetery and down the long street to press up against the house where it rattles your windows and peers in to see what you're doing. You're sitting alone in the light of the TV, remote in your hand. You're watching that movie about penguins, trying to understand why you can't fly. Why nothing you set your mind to ever seems to get off the ground. You waddle around to the refrigerator, pull out the tuna salad, plop the bowl onto the counter like a fresh caught herring. Your wings are just hands and you use them to make a sandwich. Your eggs hatched a long time ago, but your children rarely call, and their jobs brought them so far away. It's hard for them to come see you, or you them, the cost of a plane ticket so high. Again, that problem. You can't fly. But there are other things in life, aren't there? A job that makes you feel useful. They like you there, don't they? And maybe you'll be able to stay until you retire, and maybe you'll make it just under the wire and be able to draw your pension for a few years before you die. And maybe then, like the wind, you'll spread your wings wide and fly.
What did you like about Vestigial and why is it on your top 8 list?
I really loved this one just because it's kind of a vignette of this guy's life of just wake up, go to work, go home, eat some shitty leftovers you had in the fridge, and just kind of living that dead-end life of just surviving. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it just feels relatable because, you know, going back to wasting my 20s again. Mm-hmm. But it really does kind of make you think about the fact that if you really want a fulfilling life, if you really want to feel like you have any kind of meaning, or, you know, like he says, like, you know, spread your wings and fly, you actually have to like put in the work. I don't know, like I said, I really do kind of like these type of vignette stories. Yeah. Whether it be like, you know, poems or even just movies where it's just kind of like showing like a clip of someone's life.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So I was going to say something else, but I'm going to say this because I wrote a piece about, you talk about vignettes, I wrote a piece about film, cigarettes, and coffee. Right. Jim Jarmusch does right. And it was basically little vignettes of people in a cafe having coffee together and talking.
I know what you're talking about, but I haven't watched it. But I think it's on Tubi, and it sparked my interest. So I know what you're talking about.
It's really great. I mean, there is, and I wrote a piece about it because it affected me like that, and I do, and I did not. That did not dawn on me when I was thinking about this piece. But I'm glad you mentioned it because I look at it a whole different way now. I do. It is what I put down here was superficial. I put this poem makes me want to be a penguin. That's what I said. And then I love the comparison of flippers to hands. Yeah. And then I put the professor doing what he does.
Well, and what he does, that's my take on it, is I call him the master of metaphor. Yeah. And he bends metaphor. Yeah. Because he starts with the wind. Yeah. And you're almost from the perspective of the wind, or you're following the wind, and then he gets to penguins not being able to fly, and it's one smooth flowing evolving metaphor I mean, you talk about masterful use
Yeah.
of that literary form. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. And just, I want to put this on the record
Yeah.
because it's a request or even a demand. I want to write a 4-piece to his first major collection.
Yeah.
I've got 3 volumes of Luke Welch's poems in my notes on my poem. I've collected them forever, and I've tried to make the reservation, like dibs. I'm writing the introduction to your collection. God damn it.
Yep.
But
Yep.
the way he uses the wind and the perspective of the wind and follows it and ends up talking about a flightless bird.
And the thing is so like you mentioned the vignette and the whole picture of this thing. When I hear it, and you mentioned the wind. Now, I don't know, maybe the penguin came first before the wind in my head or, after I read
Okay.
it. But when I picture the wind, even early in that poem, I'm picturing snow and wind blowing snow and cold. And then the fact that he went to a penguin, again, we talked a little bit about him the last time about being
Wow.
borderline precognition with the
Right.
the fascist season piece,
Right.
right? And here again, there is no allusion to snow
Anywhere in there.
anywhere in the beginning of that. But why did my brain go there? Maybe it's because I've heard him read it and the penguin, and it's something subjective in my head or something.
But then he ends up with an Antarctic bird.
But doesn't that make it
right.
that much better to experience?
Richer, yeah.
And it's all fed because that's all part of that vignette, that picture that he paints. So
Right.
yeah, boy, the 3 of us really make one pretty decent brain.
Right, exactly. Well, yeah. Juries, those 12 jurors are smarter than any human being could possibly be. So, and the other thing I talked about here, it's interesting. One of my loves in poetry is when poets get playful, and Luke Welch gets playful like no one else.
With serious subjects.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wrote here, as I was listening to it yesterday, hysterical verbal irony. I mean,
that's
you
good.
want playfulness. And this poem does that.
That's a really good way to put it. Yeah.
One left.
One left. We are going to wrap it up the way we started out this conversation with Pam Walsh from Manitowoc. This is one of Rachel's poems, Had to Be the Villain.
Had to be the villain. Yes, he will tell you I am the villain. I have no defense against it because through his eyes, I am. But what he doesn't tell you is how that story started. The one where I am the bad guy and nothing more. But there is more. So much more. We loved once. We were happy once. And there is no way to get to the end without starting there, because if it hadn't started there, it wouldn't be a story. Just a note to self and forgotten long before I became the villain in his story. This is a tale of how love turned sour. He saw no evil deeds in himself, lusting after another he never touched, leaving my heart in the dust, using my body to pretend I was her, finding fault in my every waking moment, anywhere but the bedroom. Because there, in the dark, I was this other woman to him. In time, this became an obsession, one I could not deny him or else. And when I said no, when I cried as he touched, I felt filthy and shameful and afraid. My behavior changed. Started to wake up at 3 a.m. just to shower, or didn't shower to avoid his touch. I tried to hold my tongue to keep the peace, but I could not remain silent. I spoke my truth and severed my heart, but my words fell on deaf ears, so when I left, he convinced himself I just needed space. He stalked me, intruded into my new life until I did indeed become the villain, refused to care when he threatened to end himself if I did not acquiesce to his demands. Yes, I even told him to follow through, to save myself from his heart that could never be true. I could see his pattern for what it was. have one to hold and another to obsess over. And neither one carried love. So think what you want. Say whatever your heart desires. He is no longer my concern. And since you have chosen sides, neither are you.
Rachel, you want to start with why you put this on your list?
Yeah, this one just really got to me because, you know, you're always going to be the villain in someone else's story. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of turn around and you're like, oh, wait a second. You know, if I'm the villain, why aren't you telling the entire story? Or
right.
You know, why are you leaving some stuff out? And not to say you're always going to be the innocent one, but, you know, it just kind of made me reflect on certain things that I could relate to where you're being painted out as a villain and everybody's being turned against you. And you're like, well, I didn't
Well, it's
do
easy
anything.
for dudes to say when they break up with a girl. It's easy to dudes say, what happened? Say, she was nuts.
Actually,
she was crazy.
No, anytime.
Dismissive.
Anytime that I hear a guy say something about his ex being crazy, there's like a there's like
That's
a little
a red
ping.
flag about the guy.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a little ping in my head. I'm like, okay, so what exactly did you do to make her go crazy? Because I can be painted as a crazy ex, but it's like, wait, so what did you do that drove me into that situation? Do you wanna talk about that, or
Right.
are we just gonna talk about me being unstable?
Right. To me, when I
Right.
hear that, and it could, to be fair, it could come from a gal too, because
Oh, yeah,
gals will say,
yeah.
or whatever. But so when I hear an ex talk about an ex, especially something that like something fresh that it just happened,
Mm-hmm.
when I hear somebody talk about that, I'm taking that person down a peg,
Right.
right away. But for me, this poem, knowing Pam personally, and I get we write, and we don't always write from an autobiographical or a biographical standpoint, right? But hearing her recite this poem and talk about a relationship that may or may not have happened to her, but even hearing her and internalizing this as my friend reading this piece and that this may have happened to her, I want to punch somebody in the mouth.
Right. This is painful.
Yeah.
This is going. I don't know if it'll be written by me. I'm either doing a collection or an anthology entitled "The Things Men Do to Women."
Yeah.
And this would be in it.
Yeah, it just, and knowing Pam, and she's just a good soul. She's one of them good people, positive people.
Yeah.
And whether this is about her or not, I don't know. But if it's about, female A, whatever, out there, I'm like, this is not okay. And this
Right.
is indicative of this. And I'm glad that, again, this is a poem that Paul or I probably wouldn't pick and didn't pick. Let's face it, we didn't pick it today. But I'm glad you're here to pick it because it's valid and it's an important piece
It's an
that
important
needs to
piece.
be talked about. Yeah.
Kind of the ironic thing, I do identify as non-binary, but I'm dragged into all this shit against my will. So I always like to say, like, I'm non-binary, but I'm a girl, I guess. So, like, I don't even want to be the one bringing all this up, and I have to be,
Well, you have a female background.
Well, yeah, okay, I'm AFAB and female presenting, so I live the woman life. So
For a long part of your life.
yeah, so like I said, it's I'm a girl, I guess.
I don't even look at it as you being, I don't look at your sexuality as why you pick these things. I look at where you are. So Paul and I are men of a certain age. We've been married. We are past those marriages, but you are of a certain age, whether you're male or female or however you identify, where that experience may still be coming for you. You're still out there in the,
Or not.
We're too old to be dating, Paul and I. Pretty much. I mean, right? I
Well,
feel
you
that way.
haven't asked me, so I don't know
Right.
if I would
So
date
you know how it is.
Well,
but
don't burst Paul's bubble.
right. But I apologize for that. But between you, I just look at, you're somebody you're in that age where I think that you're more apt to look at those situations than say somebody like Paul or I.
Well,
at the end of the day,
or of a different generation.
definitely, yeah, that's more maybe what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, and I'm a little bit younger than Paul is, but at the end of the day, Do I want companionship? Yes. But when I get home at the end of the day and faced with the decision, watch Netflix and have a pizza, or go somewhere to try to meet somebody, or spend time on an app to try to meet somebody, I'm eating pizza and watching Emily in Paris. It's like it's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like you gotta find someone who is worth more than your peace.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, or I mean, okay, so this one's more of a fantasy, but someone who adds to or brings you peace.
Right.
Like I said, I should stick to more realistic, dreams.
Well, I mean, I still believe.
Wow.
So that said, I'm a poet and I'm an optimist, and I still believe. I had a very damaging relationship with but I will say this: don't give up hope, because I don't believe it's unrealistic. There is love out there, and I have to believe, as a poet and as a human being, that there is that no aspiration is too much to ask.
Right. And now I'm thinking about Lemon's hot as fuck girlfriend.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of love just is spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Exactly.
No, I agree.
And one's got to have hope for that, whether one ever achieves it or not.
Yeah, most definitely. So regular shows on Verse, which this was not one, two, or three of them.
This was not normal.
Not normal. But what we normally do is the last word, so we're going to be brief with it, but we're going to give a last word to each of us about our favorite poems, and I'm going to go to Rachel first.
Probably the biggest takeaway that I've gotten, working on the show and just hearing all these different kind of perspectives and different types of poetry is just like how diverse poetry and art is, and just the fact that none of these poets really are the same. Mm-hmm. There's always a different structure, there's different content, and it really just shows that there's really no one size fits all when it comes to any form of art. So that's just kind of what I've picked up after, all the editing I've done.
Very good. Very good.
And the one commonality between Rachel and myself is we're both huge poetry fans. Mm-hmm. That's what got you into this, because we saw you at poetry events. And at that point, you were simply a spectator. And you are a poetry fan. You're a poetry aficionado. So, and now I'm going to completely disagree with her. My final word is how similar these poets are. One of the themes I'm pulling out of this whole exercise of creating these episodes is how poets are there to express the universal. And what poets have and what they do is they have the very sensitive antennae, and they're gathering, whether it's radio waves or sunlight, and then they're expressing what that is. Mm-hmm. And that's what I got out of this, is so these poems were about universal things, that they found in their own lives. So
true. So what I want to say about the three of us picking 8 each, 24 poems, and talking about our favorite poems out of our database of season 1 was like 150, something like that, 150 poems, is that we went through and discussed 24 of our favorite poems. And you know what? We did not talk about one poem that was about the fucking moon.
What?
Which I am part of that. I'm part of that group of poets that, thinks that we shouldn't have any more poems about the moon. I think there's been enough. The moon is kind of a dead subject. And I'm going to use my last word up to say, fuck the moon. Fuck the moon. We did 24 of our favorite poems on Versed Poetry Radio, and we did not do one poem about you, moon. Not one.
Wow. Yep. I think this Friday at my yoga studio, we're doing moon salutations, and I will invite you.
Yeah, I will be. I'll be in Sheboygan at a book signing, smiling at my picture of 9 roses on the beach.
Oh,
yeah. So, listen, hope you guys out there in Radio Land, WBOM Full Service Radio Land, enjoyed these special episodes of Versed and our favorite poetry. So I wanted to thank all you guys for tuning in, not only here in the Midwest, but in the rest of the United States and in countries abroad, because as our map on the wall here in the WBOM studio shows, people all around the world are listening to us.
You have a gig coming up in the UK.
I do. I am going to England soon.
And that is because of this show, I believe.
Yeah, it is partially because of this show. No question about it. So that's cool. So from the basement of the Mendelssohn Center for the Performing Arts in Rockford, Illinois, for Savvy Magoo and Rachel, Rachael, the 2 E's engineer, and the entire production team here at Verst and WBOM Full Service Radio, I am James Hamilton, signing off until season 2. Peace out.